Now, ever since the release of Star Wars The Last Jedi by director Rian Johnson back in December of 2017, and the backlash from the fans that came along with it, really changed exactly how fans actually looked at the sequel trilogy and how Disney and Lucasfilm are really handling the Star Wars franchise. This is Mike Zeroh. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, in this video, in this post, I actually wanted to express my true feelings. I wanted to really just admit my true feelings about the Star Wars franchise and exactly where things are really going and how I feel about everything coming together here based on what we have heard and seen related to The Rise of Skywalker, my take on The Last Jedi in greater depth, and a lot more. Now, you guys may have missed it, but I actually did do a review of The Last Jedi where I went over my concerns about the future of the franchise and my problems with The Last Jedi, and the fact that now the cast of The Rise of Skywalker is starting to express their true feelings about the overall sequel trilogy and how fans thought about The Last Jedi. You guys may have seen what John Boyega said about The Last Jedi just a couple of days ago, and how Daisy Ridley seems a little deflated in her interviews, and Oscar Isaac saying nope to returning his role as Poe Dameron in the Disney Plus, streaming service if they ever wanted to make stories about Poe. He actually does not want to return, nor does John Boyega. It really seems like that everything is starting to become more clear here, that even the cast of The Rise of Skywalker is expressing their true feelings about the overall Star Wars franchise. Now, my problems with The Last Jedi, as I went over a couple of years ago, I actually didn't go into it into greater depth here, but I will say that I honestly hated The Last Jedi. I really did. If I really have to be very clear and not sugarcoat anything, I really did hate The Last Jedi, because when I went to go ahead and see that movie, and after I came out feeling very depressed, and I'm sure that some of you guys out there may have picked up on that in my initial review, where I was somewhat confused about how I felt about the movie. It wasn't until I viewed the film a second time where I started realizing all of the major mistakes by Disney and Lucasfilm and director Rian Johnson, and I will admit that, Rian Johnson was not fit for a Star Wars movie at all, in any way, shape, or form. I just was mind-boggled as to why they would choose an independent filmmaker to make his way over into a massive Star Wars film, a massive franchise that has been around since 1977. And now going into The Rise of Skywalker and everything that we have been hearing about this movie, and everything that has been lining up directly with the pieces of footage and the leaked soundtrack, the leaks are actually real. Everything related to Rey being a Skywalker, everything related to essentially, Ben Solo dying in the movie, and Rey defeating Palpatine, and Rey becoming the Chosen One, and Anakin Skywalker no longer being in The Rise of Skywalker and being cut from the film. And I just feel that Star Wars is going down a very bad path. It really is. It's almost like Padme Amidala says in Revenge of the Sith. It's going down a path I can't follow, right? So when we look at the Star Wars franchise, alright, Bob Iger talked about this just the other day, where he actually said that they are looking to literally go past the Star Wars fans, to feel unburdened by the Star Wars fans, that they are essentially done, and that they want to focus on common moviegoers for these Star Wars movies to actually be catered towards. Now, with The Last Jedi, all my different problems with that was exactly what they did with Luke. The Casino City of Canto Bight was awful. It was terrible. There's no other way to express it. It was a waste of screen time. It really made no sense at all as to why it was in the plot of the movie. And then at the very end of The Rise of Skywalker, as we have gone over from the leaks and how it matches up directly, with the soundtrack that leaked just yesterday, is that everything related to Rey becoming a Skywalker. It's almost like that Disney and Lucasfilm are trying to drag the fans into the theaters by naming the movie The Rise of Skywalker in order to make fans think it has something significant to do with either Anakin or Luke. And I just believe that it's going to I honestly believe it's just going to cause a lot of frustration among many fans out there. And with The Last Jedi, I will say that when I went to go ahead and see that movie a second time, after my first initial viewing, before that one, the theater was half empty. And that is the truth. When I went to go in there, the theater was half empty, and I felt even more depressed when I watched it a second time. Everything ranging from, Luke's death to the casino city of Canto Bight, and wasting a lot of screen time on some of the newer characters that a lot of fans didn't really care about. And it almost seems like that we are heading in the same exact direction with the rise of Skywalker, and like I've always said before in the past, I have to be more honest with how I feel about the Star Wars franchise, and these are my true honest feelings, is that The Last Jedi really left a hole, in my feelings for the Star Wars franchise. It really did. I hoped for the best for the rise of Skywalker, and so far from what the leaks, have been suggesting, and how they have been matching directly up with the actual, track listings that have leaked for the soundtrack, everything is in line. Everything is real. Everything ranging from the death of Palpatine by the hands of Rey to Ben Solo dying by transferring his life force over to Rey. Some people actually might like that, but it is going to be a Reylo moment because they kiss. So if you guys are not Reylo fans, that is going to be a real interesting observation for Star Wars fans, is to see exactly how other fans are going to react to that are not a fan of the Reylo thing. So, my feelings with The Last Jedi, it really kind of changed my perception of the Star Wars franchise. It really did. It made me view, the future of everything related with Disney in a different light. Like I say, I still hope for the best with the rise of Skywalker, but things really are not looking too bright at all. And when I look at what Bob Iger stated just the other day, it really, really affected me. It really did. It really made me feel like they are just trying to sweep, the Star Wars fans over to the side and focus on common moviegoers, which is literally what Bob Iger admitted just the other day, is that they want to feel unburdened by Star Wars fans. They don't want to feel like they're being held back by Star Wars fans. And that these new movies in the future are going to be for the general audience, which basically means that anybody that goes ahead and sees these Star Wars movies aren't really looking for anything specific, and that they won't really be for Star Wars fans. And I will say that really makes me feel like I'm betrayed by Disney and Lucasfilm. Now, I know some of you out there may take this like, like I'm overreacting or something like that. That's fine. Everybody can interpret this in different ways. But the way I feel as a true Star Wars fan, and how everything is happening over in Hollywood with the Hollywood agenda and identity politics, everything related to that needs to stop. I really feel that Hollywood lives in a bubble, so to speak. If you look at the Hollywood, community, and if you look at what they have done with the Star Wars movies and what they have done with the Terminator franchise, Ghostbusters 2016, other Star Wars films out there in the works, and other TV series, that seems like it's going to go down the same exact path. And I will say that I may actually touch on those movies in the future. I would like to hear what you guys have to say about that. Everything related to everything in the Hollywood bubble here. And I honestly really do feel that there needs to be a pushback. That's my honest, feelings, here. And my honest thoughts is that I feel that there needs to be a pushback toward the Hollywood bubble and their Hollywood agenda and their identity politics being thrown into Star Wars and being thrown into other movies out there as well. Terminator Dark Fate was a great example, and I may touch on that in the future. If you guys want me to talk about, the other films out there within Hollywood, let me know below in the comments. But when we look at Star Wars here, that's the problem, is that it just makes me feel like that it's not true to the originals and the prequels. There's something about these new movies so far, and I will say that I did believe that The Force Awakens was a decent Star Wars film. I will say that, but for the most part, it was too much of a rehash of Star Wars A New Hope. It didn't feel, even at the time, there were moments where it didn't feel right, where you could almost tell that Disney and Lucasfilm just wasn't quite staying true to the franchise. And even Bob Iger admitted to this, that basically what they're trying to do is that they are trying to play it safe with The Force Awakens, is what they did. So, alright, at the very end of that movie, I said, alright, let's just see how The Last Jedi rolls out, and everything that we were hearing about The Last Jedi ended up to be very disappointing for a lot of fans out there. And I will say that it really affected how, I actually feel towards the Disney Star Wars films and how I feel toward the future of the Star Wars franchise. So I just wanted to touch on my feelings a little bit there. You know, I wanted to really admit the truth about my feelings about Star Wars, The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens, and how I feel about the leaks with The Rise of Skywalker, and how this may very well be a repeat of what's happened with The Last Jedi and the backlash that received. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time. Alrighty everyone, so a couple of hours ago I got back from seeing Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker for the very first time. You guys might have seen my first reaction of the movie, my raw thoughts about the film, going over what I hated about the movie and what I somewhat liked about the film, and of course my concerns about what Disney and Lucasfilm have done to the sequel trilogy and Star Wars as a whole. This is Mike Zeroh. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future content. Now, everything related to The Rise of Skywalker, in this video I will be going into spoilers, so if you guys have not seen the movie, you know exactly what to do. So with that being said, I wanted to go over, certain points in the movie that I really liked and certain points in the movie that I really hated in the actual movie. And yes, there are moments in this movie that I actually really hated. It felt like an emotional roller coaster of liking something then completely not liking something at all. Now, first off, as I stated in my reaction video, alright, the tone of this movie has a different feel than both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Now, the best way to describe the tone is the tone has an Indiana Jones feel to it when the heroes are all together, such as Rey, Finn, and Poe searching for Ochi's ship, and the Wayfinder device, and everything related to the Sith dagger, traveling from planet to planet. This movie has tons of global trotting to worlds like Kijimi, Pasana, Kef Burr, and more. Now, the movie feels very rushed and too convoluted. The majority of the first and second act of the film begins to pick up more in the third act, I would say. Almost felt like 3 multiple movies or so, give or take, in one. Now, the thing about this film, one thing I will say is that it feels way too convoluted. It feels way too rushed, way too busy. My mind was just going so crazy while watching this film. At least for me, when I stepped out of the theater and I actually was, going over my thoughts about what I thought about the movie, all I could think about is that the movie feels very scrambled and messy as far as the pacing goes. It feels very rushed, feels way too fast. That's the best way I could really describe it. It's one of the major flaws of the film. Now, the lightsaber duels of the movie, are actually said to be, in my opinion at least, the best of the trilogy. The flash fight on Kijimi and inside of Kylo Ren's chambers was quite solid. Now, I really enjoyed the moment the saber fight ended, that Darth Vader's helmet lands on the ground. The duel on the second Death Star was also surprisingly well shot. The visuals were dead on impressive. However, this duel was only a maximum of 2 to 3 minutes, which was a big flaw and needed to be far longer. Again, take note of Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. We have both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker in the longest lightsaber duel. It should have been something more like that. I feel like that the movie hyped up these lightsaber duels so much to the point where once you go ahead and see the film, they are way too short. However, the new fighting styles are actually much appreciated, as well as the visuals. It just felt like these saber duels were way too short, and that's the biggest flaw of them all. Now, the other thing is that there are lots of dialogue in the film that is very weak and poor at times. I will say that, more so between the characters of Poe, Finn, Rey, and others. The dialogue sometimes feels repetitive, like Finn and Rey always saying a feeling when they're talking about the Force, of how it's a feeling. They must have said this several times in the movie from start to finish, to the point where it got quite annoying. But anything from that, or Kylo Ren and Luke saying that Rey is a Palpatine, the dialogue just felt off to me for many moments in the first and second act, where the acting I also feel is the worst of the trilogy. However, the acting has its moments, such as when Han Solo and Ben Solo meet in a vision on Kef Burr on the second Death Star, which was quite emotional, and honestly, I will admit, it made me shed tears almost. It really did. That moment was very heartwarming to actually have both father and son communicating. You know what it almost reminded me of? It reminded me of the scene in Man of Steel, where we have Superman talking to his father on like Mount, on some mountain or something like that. I forgot exactly where it was, but It really reminded me of Man of Steel's moment where you have father and son talking in the form of a vision, and I believe that's where JJ Abrams really got it from. Moving past the dialogue and the acting here, I will say that everything related to the dialogue having flaws as well as the acting. The Palpatine scenes, I will say, are the best parts of the movie, and the battle over Exegol, and I thought it also felt very desperate to introduce Palpatine right in the very beginning of the film, only to ignore Palpatine all the way to the end of this movie. I feel like there was no build-up for Palpatine, and that the Snow clones were a quick fix or a patchwork by JJ Abrams to fix Rian Johnson's mess. So, about Palpatine, alright, let's get into this for a couple of seconds here. So, Palpatine, in the very beginning of the movie, there was no build-up, like I just said. No build-up to Palpatine at all. Though it is appreciated that you do get to see him in the very beginning of the film, it also kind of doesn't do too well for the actual movie, because then you're left with no Palpatine at all for the majority of the film, and you're just waiting for him and waiting for him and waiting for him. You know, they could have added at least one middle scene of Palpatine, because the very end, I feel at least, Palpatine was shortchanged as far as screen time goes. And this matches up with what we have been talking about for a couple of months now, that they reduced his screen time down to only 12 minutes, and that's exactly what it felt like. So moving on past this, the story of Palpatine's son, let me just say that was poorly handled, and yet you introduce this character as Rey's father, who is Palpatine's son. However, you don't go into it that much, and they're going to leave all of that up to a novelization. So by the way, we will only be learning more about Palpatine's son, also known as Rey's father, in a novel, in a book that's supposed to be released in March of 2020. I feel that's very, I don't know, lazy, the fact that, you know, they couldn't explore a little bit more about Rey's father, also known as Palpatine's son. I also found it very strange why Palpatine doesn't even acknowledge his son at all in any way, shape, or form. He only acknowledges that Rey is indeed his granddaughter, and they both share the same bloodline. So, the other thing about that, moving on away from that, alright, I was not a fan of Luke's new appearance as a Force Ghost. I will be honest with this. There are shots where he looks like normal Luke, like how he was in The Force Awakens, kind of, and in The Last Jedi, sorta, where he kind of has that Ahch-To look. But there's shots, let me tell you, I mean, where he's in the hut, where he's talking to Rey and telling her about Leia's, lightsaber and their training session. By the way, about that training session, that was a highlight of the movie as well, where we do get to see both Luke and Leia training with green and blue lightsabers, where they actually have a de-aged Mark Hamill and a de-aged Carrie Fisher. But I believe that the Carrie Fisher sequence was all CGI for the young Leia. I don't believe that they de-aged her. That looked like a video game almost. So the graphics were a little off for Leia, but the graphics for a de-aged Mark Hamill were spot on. I guess because it wasn't full-on CGI. So, yeah, like I said, I was not a fan of Luke's new appearance as a Force Ghost on Ahch-To for the main reason of this, alright? For some reason, JJ Abrams decided to make Luke Skywalker's hair very, very long. I don't know where that came from, but in the inside of the hut of Ahch-To, his hair looks very, very long, and then when he's lifting the X-Wing from the waters of Ahch-To, his hair suddenly becomes, I don't know, shorter or differently styled. I don't know what the deal was, but it's almost like that there were two different Lukes, at least from what I saw. When he's inside of the hut, Luke has long, long hair, and then when he's lifting the X-Wing, it looks different, more like how he had it in The Last Jedi, which I thought was a little strange that they changed his hair like that, just 1 year after the events of The Last Jedi. Can Force Ghosts grow hair? I don't know, but it's felt a little inconsistent with how Luke appeared in, of course, you know, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. At most, I feel that they should have kept Luke's Force Ghost appearance of how he appeared on the world of Crate, looking younger and with the shorter hair and looking more clean cut. Moving on, I will say that the horses on the Star Destroyer during the final battle over Exegol was horrible and laughable to the point where I was just rolling my eyes watching this particular scene. So, the scene in which we do have the horses invading the Star Destroyers of the Final Order, That really felt like a mixture of Game of Thrones and Star Wars. It just doesn't work, and it comes off as very funny, at least in my opinion. That was one scene that I truly hated, and I will admit that, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there may agree with me. Maybe some of you may disagree, but I feel that that scene should have been cut from the movie. The horses were just ridiculous. As far as everything else, I really hated how Rey killed Palpatine so fast, of what should have been a predictable counterattack. The way he died was unacceptable, and sure, I understand that she became all of the Jedi, how she states, and I am all of the Jedi. That piece of dialogue came off a little cringy to me at least, and felt a little forced, no pun intended, but it just came off as Disney's excuse to have Rey, of all people, have the ability to kill her grandfather so easily. It should have been Ben Solo who holds the Skywalker bloodline to defeat Sidious once and for all. That's how I would have viewed it, and the fact that she becomes the chosen one, defeats the Sith once and for all, it just destroys Anakin's legacy. It really does. It destroys Anakin's legacy of the chosen one prophecy and what was all told in the prequels. Now, beyond that, alright, moving on away from that particular scene that I hated, another scene that I really did not like was how Rey calling herself a Skywalker at the end of the film is also something that I hated as well. The title of the entire film almost comes off as misleading by Disney, or a way to bring the audience into theaters to make them think it has something to do with Luke, Anakin, or something revolving around the actual Skywalker bloodline. Now, of course, the movie has two different meanings. Palpatine calls Ben Solo a Skywalker. Palpatine mentions, like I fell on the second Death Star, like I fell, he mentions, so will the last Skywalker. He force pushes him into, the bottomless pit on Exegol, where you see lightning going down there, and you think Ben Solo's dead, but he's not, and we'll get into that in just a second. So yeah, I think that this movie, yes, it does have two different meanings, but obviously the real meaning of the title mostly has to do with Rey becoming a Skywalker, which I felt was a little strange. In fact, I really did not like the decision at all. It should have been maybe perhaps Ben Solo adopting the Skywalker name, or just changing his name to Skywalker, because he actually is a part of that bloodline. But if you guys feel differently, that is perfectly welcome. Express your opinions below in the comments. Moving on from this, the Knights of Ren were absolutely useless and were a complete waste of time. There's no denying that. Now, they don't really do much in the film at all, and are killed so easily by Ben Solo in seconds. Even though they do give him a good beating beforehand, the Knights of Ren felt very wasted, and it's clear that tons of their scenes were lost during the reshoots. So, in case you guys did not know, a lot of reshoots took place in August, September, and October, where 30% of the movie was reshot, a lot of scenes were lost, a lot of scenes were deleted, and along with that, it's pretty obvious that a lot of the Knights of Ren footage was also deleted and put on the cutting room floor. Now, the movie certainly felt like patchwork of Rian Johnson's mess with The Last Jedi, such as how Luke is back to himself as far as how he should have been, as far as how he acted. He catches the saber from Rey, throwing it over the cliff, where Luke says, one must respect a Jedi weapon. It was almost like a little nod to Rian Johnson's mistake of how he treated Luke, chucking the saber over the cliff, or the moment in that he was wrong of staying on the island because of fear. So many parts felt like a slap in the face to Rian Johnson through Luke Skywalker's dialogue and, the parallels between what Rey is doing on the island and what Luke did already on the island. So you can see what JJ Abrams was trying to do. It was almost like he was sending a message to the fans that, hey, I'm trying to fix The Last Jedi, but this movie's too short to do that. That's how it came off as. So, the pacing of Ben Solo's kiss, let me just talk about this. It was a little awkward, I will be honest. The pacing of Ben Solo's kiss with Rey and the death of Ben Solo was very awkward because of this reason. As he is laughing and then suddenly falls on the ground, dead and vanishing, it could have been paced better. I felt like it was way too fast. First he's laughing and then out of nowhere, just drops right on the floor. I feel like there should have been a longer pause in between where he laughs, he begins to stop laughing, slowly, begins to struggle, then falls down slowly. I think it should have been done something more around those lines. Obviously, that scene is a direct parallel to, the moment where Luke is, kneeling over Vader and his death. It's the same exact scenario. You can see the parallels there. And it's just a little bit different because obviously this is more in a romantic sense than a father and son bonding moment. Another part that I do want to go over is the Leia scenes and the themes by John Williams. Amazing. Amazing. Hands down amazing. Like I said, there are a lot of things that I hate about this movie. There are also a lot of things that I love about this movie. This movie is nothing like The Last Jedi where you hate it consistently. It's not like that at all. I would definitely say that it's better than The Last Jedi, but slightly better than that of The Force Awakens. So Leia's scenes, though there isn't a lot of Leia in this movie, there's a fair amount of Leia in the film, such as when she's Jedi training with Rey, or when Rey begins to die because she has to call out to her son Ben Solo, and by doing so, it takes all the life force out of her. This is what ultimately kills Leia, by reaching out to her son from across space. So that's the ultimate cause of death for Leia, is because it literally takes all the energy out of her, as Maz Kanata said, right? So, General Hux, alright, the last bit I want to go over here, General Hux, wasted character again, though an improvement to how he was treated in The Last Jedi. General Hux, you know, he was better than how he was in The Last Jedi, however, also another waste of time. The side plot of a mole in the First Order, it felt so meaningless to where Pride just kills him in a matter of seconds after learning of Hux's fake injury. So the mole in the First Order, it feels like a plot point that was not really explored, or it didn't need to be explored, and it just didn't really matter. They could have honestly, at this point in time, just killed Hux in The Last Jedi and did away with him, and just have Pride, you know, be the main character to take over Hux. They could have just done that. You know, the mole, the whole side story of that just didn't make sense to me, because it just really didn't go anywhere. Like I said, guys, as I have stated in this video, there's a lot of things that I hate about this movie, but there's also a lot of things that I enjoy about this movie. It's very strange. It's a very strange feeling. I don't know how to explain this movie. I'm very, conflicted, if you will. It's like an emotional roller coaster, as I said in my reaction video. I like a scene, I don't like a scene, then I like another scene, and then I don't like that scene. It's like an up and down cycle for me when I was watching this movie, and I think that's part of the reason as to why JJ Abrams felt very rushed developing this film, and how he had to fix a lot of errors with The Last Jedi, fix a lot of Rian Johnson's mess with The Last Jedi. I wouldn't say that I believe it's a great film per se. I would say that it's a decent movie with a lot of flaws. That's what I would say. It's better than The Last Jedi. However, it's not much better than that of The Force Awakens. That's how I see it. Do I think it's a fan favorite of the Skywalker saga? Not really. It's an enjoyable film at best, like I say, with a lot of flaws. That's just how I view it. I can't say I hate this movie consistently. I just can't say that because that's not the truth. But I do have highlights of the movie. Like I say, there are scenes in the film that I like, but there are also scenes that I really dislike. And that's my take on The Rise of Skywalker, essentially. Like I say, the saber duels, best of the sequel trilogy, because obviously we didn't really get too much lightsaber action in the sequel trilogy to begin with, right? If you think about it, The Last Jedi, obviously we had no real saber. You know, Kylo versus Luke is just a bunch of dodging. It wasn't a real saber duel. The Force Awakens, though it was a decent lightsaber duel, I feel that the Death Star battle was far superior than the Force Awakens lightsaber duel. Because you have everything in the background. You got the sound of the waves. You got the music by John Williams. You have Finn and Jannah watching this from, you know, in the distance. How Rey force pushes Finn, showing us that she's starting to tap into her anger almost. You know, trying to push Finn away from getting into danger. All those different elements, I think, were a different take on things. And it's pretty obvious that this battle was inspired by the concept art of The Force Awakens, where we have the original version of Finn watching two, you know, rivals fight each other on Starkiller base. It was somewhat similar, and you can see where that came from and how he just kind of inserted a different environment. So yeah, guys, like I say, I mean, this movie, coming out of it, I feel so brain dead. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to think about. I mean, it's so rushed, so convoluted. Things go by so quickly, such as the light speed skipping, or whatever they call it. That was an interesting take, but like I say, I mean, you're jumping from world to world so very fast. The global trotting is way too fast for me, where they could have dialed it down a notch. Some of the characters I didn't really like. I wasn't really into that Dio droid. I honestly find that Dio droid to be rather annoying, how it actually speaks basic, how it keeps saying like, oh, I'm sorry, and, you know, just saying like regular words felt a little strange to me for a droid like that, right? I can understand a droid like C-3PO and all, but for this type of droid that's more in the level of BB-8 and R2, I feel that they should have given him a language that wasn't necessarily basic. So, with that being said, guys, I mean, I would like to hear what you guys have to say about this particular film. I mean, this movie, obviously, a lot of people are going to feel differently about it. It's very interesting on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics do not like the film, however, the audience score is up. And that's usually what happens when the critics don't like a movie all the time on Rotten Tomatoes, is that you see the audience score go up. Like I say, guys, I mean, that's all I really have to say. I may have missed a couple of points because there's so much going on in this film. It feels so big. There's a lot to tell, and there's a lot to actually talk about. But yeah, with that being said, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time. Now that Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is out in theaters around the world, a lot of fans have been expressing different reactions, different opinions, thoughts, and reviews about this movie. And from what I have seen, a lot of people either hate it or love it, or in the middle. There's a lot of mixed reactions going on with the final installment of the Skywalker saga that started back in 1977. This is Mike Zeroh. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, there's one thing that I really wanted to tell you guys the truth about, everything related to Star Wars, which we're going to get into in just a couple of seconds. Now, The Rise of Skywalker, big movie, as you all know, it released into theaters a couple of days ago on the 19th, and a lot of fans have been expressing different feelings about this movie. Now, one thing I personally will say is that I've gotten the chance to go ahead and see this movie 3 times already. Now, I honestly did not plan on seeing it 3 times, and I honestly did not even think about seeing it 3 times at first. But then I began to wonder to myself, how am I going to feel if I see it a second time? And then a third time. I had Fandango points. I figured, alright, let's use them, right? Because I don't really know what else I'm going to use, you know, those points for this year. Might as well use them on The Rise of Skywalker. See the movie 3 times. Make sure that my feelings are 100% honest of what I said in my previous couple of other videos about my thoughts about the film, such as my spoilers review and my initial reaction. Now, one thing I will say that after seeing the movie 3 times, my feelings haven't really changed. Now, the thing about that is, I've actually expressed many times before in the past that there's a lot of scenes in this movie that I hate, there's a lot of scenes in this movie that I rather really love. And I've gone over the scenes that I really do hate and love before in the past. And I will say, the truth here is that I actually feel the same after seeing the movie 3 times in a row. You know, actually seeing it 3 times, you know, seeing the movie, getting a better idea of where things are really at. In fact, if anything, it gave me a better sense of the movie and recognizing other pieces of dialogue, realizing specific little Easter eggs and other clues out there. There's a lot of stuff hidden in this movie that you guys may have missed if you guys actually, you know, look down or look to the other way for a split second. There's a lot of stuff going on in this movie. It's very fast-paced, and as you all know, that was one of my big criticisms about this movie, is that it feels very convoluted, it feels very rushed, feels too fast, at least in the first act and the second act for the majority, at least to me, in my opinion. The thing I will say is this: after watching the movie, I would say 3 times, the majority of the film that I really do like the most, and we will be going into spoilers here, so if you guys have not seen the film, please do back out. You know exactly what to do. I really love the Palpatine scenes. I'll say that right there, right now. I love the Palpatine scenes. The only thing that I do not like at all still, after watching the movie 3 times, is the death of Palpatine. My feelings have not changed about this, and it's exactly why I wanted to see the movie 3 times. I wanted to make sure that I'm still being 100% honest with each and every one of you about my view on the movie. And I could say it's a decent Star Wars movie with a lot of flaws, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. We're all human beings, we have our own opinions, and that's perfectly fine, right? So you're all welcome to express your own thoughts, by the way, below in the comments. You know, don't feel like you're being held back or anything like that. You're all free to express exactly what you want to. So this movie, after seeing it 3 times, nothing has really changed for me other than the fact that I will admit this. The moment in which Palpatine dies at the very end, it really hasn't progressed for me into liking that. I've expressed this before in my other reviews and my other reaction videos. The death of Palpatine for me was a big issue because I just feel that there was no build up to it and it came on so suddenly, and that it should have been a team effort. It really should have been between Ben Solo and Rey fighting against Darth Sidious, you know, the Dark Lord of the Sith. I love the Force Storm in this movie, how he unleashes the power of the Force. You know, nothing can stop the return of the Sith, and he pretty much just uses all the power that he has from the Force dyad from both Ben and Rey and unleashes it against the Resistance. I think that was a very cool scene, and it really did add a lot of dramatic moments in the movie. So this movie does have dramatic moments. It also has its emotional moments, like the Han Solo and Ben Solo scene. Perfectly well acted in my own opinion. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that I really do not like. There's a lot of dialogue in the film that is very cheesy. I've gone over this. One scene that I really do not like at all is the fact that there is a moment in the film where we have General Hux saying, "I am the spy," and you know, Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron says, "I knew it," and he shoots him in the leg or something like that. To me, I didn't like that scene. I thought it was very poor, in my own opinion. That was a wasted piece of screen time. The entire segment of figuring out exactly who the mole is, it felt like a meaningless plot to the point where just Hux dies so suddenly by Allegiant General Pride, I should say. The fact that he gets killed so fast just like that, it almost made that side story feel completely meaningless in the movie. So, like I've always said before in the past, I mean, this movie has its emotional highs, it's got its highlights, but it also has a lot of flaws. And when I mean a lot of flaws, I mean a lot in the movie. You know, there's quite a number of them in the first, second, and third act. Like I've expressed before, this movie feels like an emotional roller coaster still, even after seeing it 3 times. I wanted to make sure that I was either going to, you know, love it or hate it more watching it 3 times, but my feelings remain the same, and that's the absolute truth here. You know, I'm not masking anything over, my feelings remain the same as is after seeing the movie 3 times. Once again, I mean, I had points on my Fandango account. I figured, you know, what the hell, let's go ahead, see it 2 more times, get a better idea of everything, and see if my feelings wear off or not suddenly. And to tell you the truth, I still feel like it's a decent Star Wars movie. It is a decent film with flaws. That's basically the general, you know, the general thought of mine when I just have to, like, talk about the Rise of Skywalker, right? I don't know if you guys agree with me, but the opening of the film, very, very fast. You know, everything related to Kylo Ren on Mustafar. By the way, that world is Mustafar, where he's on that red planet. It was confirmed in the visual dictionary. Little fact, in case you guys did not know. He's on Mustafar, he gets Vader's Wayfinder device, steals it, travels over to Exegol, and then before you know it, we're on the jungle world where Rey is training with Leia. I mean, it goes all over the place in the beginning of the movie to the point where it was very hard to process in the first viewing, and I had to watch it again in order to remember the scenes in order. I don't know if you guys had the same problem, but when I got out of the movie the first viewing, I couldn't think back, you know, to the entire film correctly. I could not list exactly, you know, what happened first, what happened second, what happened third, so on and so forth. That's exactly how I felt coming out of the movie, is that it felt very scrambled. That's probably the best way to explain it. It felt very scrambled as far as the scenes were. We were going back and forth, and, you know, pieces of dialogue were going nowhere at times, and I feel like some of the dialogue was even a little bit repetitive also in this movie, such as all the characters that kept saying a feeling, a feeling, a feeling with the Force and stuff like that. That was way overdone, if I really had to say one thing there. But yeah, guys, like I say, I mean, I think that the best way to make sure if you really either love or hate this movie, and to really test your own self, to see exactly if you feel different about it, or if you feel, you know, worse or better about the movie, I think that 3 times is the perfect amount of times to go ahead and see it. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. We're not going to get the end of the Skywalker saga in theaters again until years and years from now, where they want to do maybe, you know, a re-release or something like that. So I figured, let's just embrace this moment in order to see a Star Wars movie on film, since we won't be seeing one related to the Skywalker saga, per se, ever again. You know, we will have more Star Wars movies, but as far as the Skywalker saga, it's over. And yes, it is very bittersweet, the fact that we're moving away from that, but like I've always said before in the past, there are quite a number of scenes in this movie that I really do not like at all. There's also a lot of scenes that I love. And that's the best way to express it. With The Last Jedi, I literally hated that movie from start to finish. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I hated that movie. You know, I can't find anything in that film that I really genuinely enjoyed. In fact, I only watched that movie 2 times in its entirety. You know, I didn't watch anything. I didn't buy the Blu-ray. I didn't do any of that. So with The Rise of Skywalker, I feel it's slightly better than The Force Awakens. It's entertaining. I think that the fact that the group is back together again, such as Finn, Poe, and Rey, I think that also helps. The fact that we get that little sense of Star Wars A New Hope, or just the original trilogy. Something that should have been done a very long time ago by Disney and Lucasfilm. I'm still surprised as to why we didn't do that in The Force Awakens or even in The Last Jedi. Is that I think that's one of the main reasons as to why the sequel trilogy felt different. It's because it never really felt like the originals, where you had these 3 characters working together. And sure, granted, we didn't really necessarily get that in the prequels either, but we did to a certain extent, right? You know, we had both, you know, Anakin and Obi-Wan having a lot of scenes with Padme. That was true. But when we look at Episode 9 here, I mean, yes, the box office results really, you know, aren't the best of the best as expected, and that could either mean 2 things. Either a lot of fans have lost interest in this movie, or they're just boycotting the film after seeing The Last Jedi, or it could very well be that, as usual in a lot of franchises out there, the 3rd film usually is the lowest. That happens quite a bit in a lot of franchises out there. Not every single franchise, but a lot of them out there. The 3rd usually gains the less money. So, with that being said, guys, I would like to hear what each and every one of you guys have to say about this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.